Hello and welcome back to Coco Sleep, your podcast of original children's bedtime stories and meditations designed to make bedtime a dream. Tonight I'd like to start by wishing a warm welcome and give a happy hello to Joshua, Phoenix, Sea-Pear, Delilah, Ruby, Olive, Theo and his dog Penny, and Evelyn and Ruby, who've been waiting for their shout-out every night. Thank you for your patience, girls. We're so happy to have you in the Coco Club, everyone. So, to tonight's story. Cosmo and Astrid want to do something special for their dad, Orion, to show him how much they appreciate him. They learn that the best way they can do that is by using their unique magical powers alongside their love. Can you remember what their special powers are? Whilst you think about it, lie back and close your eyes. Maybe snuggle into your bed a little bit and get as comfy as you can, giving a little sigh out. As you are there, gently breathing in and out, imagine some magic golden dust being sprinkled over your face, relaxing you and lulling you into a peaceful, deep sleep. Now, I'm sure you remember their powers. They are our young dream givers. Let's join them now in Orion's Dreams by Alicia Ainsley. One night, after a particularly long shift delivering dreams, Orion returned home to his purple house in the clouds and collapsed on the sofa with a sigh. His wings were so tired after flying around the world all night, and his hands were aching from sprinkling so much dream dust everywhere. He closed his eyes and instantly fell into a slumber, breathing heavily and snoring loudly. He snored so loudly, in fact, that his children, Cosmo and Astrid, wandered into the living room to see what was making all the noise. Young Cosmo and Astrid didn't go out delivering dreams with their father every night. As they were only children, they needed some nights off to learn and play. But adult dream givers, like their father, Orion, worked almost every evening. After all, if the dream givers had a night off, then who would give out dreams to the sleeping people on Earth? Seeing their father lying on the sofa exhausted, Cosmo and Astrid decided to make him a little more comfortable. Cosmo found a blanket to lay over their father to keep him warm, and Astrid slid a pillow beneath his head so that his neck was a little more comfortable. Orion stirred and snuggled up gratefully before rolling over and continuing to snooze on the sofa. Cosmo and Astrid crept out of the living room quietly so as not to disturb their sleepy dad. They retreated to their bedroom and giggled about what they had seen. "Poor Daddy," Astrid sighed. "He works so hard every single night." Cosmo nodded his head and agreed. "I know," he said. "I wish there was something we could do to help him. He seems to be very tired all the time at the moment." The young dream givers thought about what they could do to help their father relax. They were very proud of him and wanted to do something to show that they cared about him and appreciated him. They decided to ask their mother for a bit of inspiration. Their mother, Nova, was marking her students' homework in the kitchen. Nova worked at the Dream Givers Training Academy, and it was her job to teach all the young dream givers about the world and how to use their magical powers. She was sitting at the kitchen table, marking the papers with a glittering quill that wrote in a special invisible ink that only the student whose paper it belonged to could read. "Mummy," Astrid asked, interrupting her mother's work. We want to do something nice for Daddy. Do you have any ideas of what we can do? Nova smiled and asked her children why they wanted to do something so lovely. They told her that their father had fallen asleep on the sofa because he was so tired, and they thought he worked very hard and deserved a treat. Nova agreed. Orion did work very hard, and she suggested that he deserved a night off work. Nova replied, I will book him a night off work so that we can all spend it together. Cosmo and Astrid grinned with appreciation. This would be perfect. Orion could have a night off to relax and do something nice with his family. That would make him feel better and re-energized. After all, everyone works a little bit better when they're getting the proper rest they need. Their mother booked the next night off work for Orion so that Cosmo and Astrid could spend some quality time with him. When the time came around for Orion to head to work, he went to find his satchel of dream dust, but Cosmo beat him to it. Cosmo hid the dream dust behind his back, smiled at his father, and announced that he wasn't going to work tonight. Instead, Orion could do anything he wanted and his family would join him. Orion was puzzled. Surely he couldn't take the night off work when there was so much to be done. But his wife Nova confirmed that it was true. They had all arranged for Orion to have the night off to spend some quality time with his family. Orion was delighted. It was such a surprise. Astrid gave her dad a hug and asked, So, what would you like to do tonight, Daddy? Orion hummed as he thought. What had he wanted to do for a while that he hadn't had time for? They could fly to Egypt to see the pyramids, or float along the lazy Amazon River, admiring the amazing wildlife along the way. They could enjoy a night in watching movies with popcorn, or have a go at building a treehouse in their garden. There were many things that Orion had wanted to do for a while, but hadn't found the time for. He gazed out of the window and into the twinkling night sky. The wispy white cloud that they lived on cast swirling shapes in the air, and the moon shone luminously. A night out enjoying the gorgeous sky that they lived in would be a treat in itself. That's when Orion had an idea for what he would like to do with his night off. He turned to his thoughtful family and suggested, I've always wanted to go to the North Star. Maybe we could all go there together. Cosmo and Astrid clasped their hands with glee, and Nova smiled with excitement. That sounded like a wonderful idea. The magical family of four dusted off their wings and popped on their coats. Then they stepped out of their front door and onto the soft cloud that they lived on top of. The family all took each other's hands and fluttered their wings to lift up into the air. Hand in hand, Orion, Nova, Cosmo and Astrid flew up into the night sky and made their way towards the North Star. The North Star was a special star in the galaxy. With its bright light and unchanging position, it had guided sailors home and helped adventurers navigate their way across the Earth for centuries. The North Star was situated directly above the Earth's North Pole, and Cosmo and Astrid hoped that they might catch a glimpse of a polar bear as they flew by. The family of dream givers soared through the night sky towards the North Star. It was always easy to find. All they had to do was find the Big Dipper constellation and then look a little further down to see the Little Dipper. It was easy. Both were shaped like saucepans. At the tip of the Little Dipper's panhandle was the North Star. "Can you see it yet?" Orion called out to his children as they flew hand in hand. Cosmo and Astrid gazed out into the sky and searched for the North Star. Noticing the curve of the Little Dipper and the special star that shone brightly at its tip, Astrid cried out, "I can see it! It's over there!" The dream givers followed Astrid's direction and whisked off to the left towards the stars that made up the Little Dipper. As they got closer, Cosmo couldn't help but think that the stars looked more like the shape of a little bear than a pan, but he kept it to himself. As they approached the North Star, Cosmo and Astrid glanced down at the earth below. They could see the snowy landscape of the North Pole stretching out for many miles, and icy waters with glistening glaciers protruding from within. Orion was delighted by all of the picturesque scenery too, and he guided the family down towards the earth just a little so that they could get a better look. Astrid spotted a fluffy white polar bear plodding across the land with a younger bear in tow, and Astrid grabbed her father's attention to show him. The polar bear's fur was so clean that they almost blended into the landscape. The polar bear's fuzzy white fur provided excellent camouflage in the snowy wilderness. Nova noticed a colony of penguins waddling along the banks of a snowy shore. The adorable penguins toddled up to the end of a snow-topped glacier and one by one dove off the edge and down into the icy waters below with a plop. The Dreamgiver family watched the penguins floating around in the water below, splashing each other as they landed, and then swimming with purpose through the water, no doubt in search of a new place to call home. Cosmo also spied a group of huge tusked walruses relaxing on the ice. He could hardly believe how ginormous the creatures were up close, and he was impressed at how their smooth, blubbery bodies kept them warm in such cold weather. Astrid begged her parents to let them go off in search of Santa's grotto, but they said that there wouldn't be time. Astrid sighed and accepted that she would have to wait to visit Santa. She hoped that one day she would have the opportunity to deliver a dream to him. The 4 dream givers rose back up into the dark night sky and zoomed towards the North Star. With every beat of their wings, the star grew bigger and bigger and brighter and brighter. Eventually, they reached a large silver gate at the entrance to the North Star. A friendly fairy with silver wings and blue skin, just like them, greeted the dream givers at the gate and welcomed them to the North Star. She gave them 4 little wristbands to wear during their visit and then opened up the gate to allow them inside. The family had never been to the North Star before, but Orion had heard great things, which was why he had chosen it as the place to spend his night off. Looking around, there seemed to be so much to do, and everywhere they looked, they saw a myriad of different flying creatures enjoying themselves. There were pixies and an assortment of fairies, unicorns with wings, and cat astronauts who had parked up their rocket ship outside the gates. There was a mystical phoenix and a flying piggy, and a group of talking animals who had visited on a flying coach trip from planet Earth. Cosmo and Astrid even bumped into some Dreamgiver friends from school who had come for a night out with their family too. The North Star seemed like the place to be, and Orion couldn't wait to explore it with his family. Nova looked to her husband and asked, "Where shall we begin then?" Orion looked around at all of the attractions on offer. There was a giant helter-skelter ride with a long slide wrapped round and around a tall multicoloured tower. Cosmo and Astrid would love that, he thought. There were bungee jumping trampolines that claimed you could bounce and see the whole universe from the top. And there was an empty stage that advertised a spectacular show starting in 1 hour's time. There were shops and a giant swimming pool with an array of water slides plus restaurants and cafes to enjoy some delicious food at. Orion noticed that his stomach was grumbling after such a long journey and spotted a pop-up stall serving refreshing gelato in different flavours. He decided they would start there and have a snack before enjoying everything on offer at the North Star. The family of Dreamgivers chose their unique gelato flavours and slurped up their delicious treats. There were some very interesting flavours here on the North Star that they had never tried before. Cosmo and Astrid shared a big Saturn fruit sundae, while Nova ordered moon cheesecake flavoured gelato. Meanwhile, Orion ordered a big tub of Jupiter shortbread crunch. The North Star was already turning out to be a delightful night out for the family. Once their gelato treats were finished, the family allowed Orion to choose everything that he wanted to do. He knew that Cosmo and Astrid would love the helter-skelter, so he led them all up to the top. Orion popped Cosmo onto his lap, and Nova held Astrid on hers, and then they raced down the winding slide to the bottom. Cosmo and Astrid squealed with amusement as they whizzed down the large slide with their parents, and Orion and Nova laughed the whole way. After that, Orion suggested they go watch the show at the North Star Theatre. It was an enthralling circus spectacular with floating aerial artists, fire breathers, and incredible gymnasts. They all adored the show and clapped and cheered at the end, pleading for more. Orion, Cosmo, and Astrid all wanted to have a go on the bungee jumping trampolines, so they all strapped themselves into the harnesses next to each other. Then they bounced alongside each other, getting higher and higher each time. Orion felt elated as he boinged up into the air, high above the surface of the North Star and her beaming light. It was true what they said. You could practically see the entire universe from the top of the bungee. After several thrilling bounces, Orion, Cosmo, and Astrid began to tire. And when they returned to Nova on the ground, she giggled as she observed all of their sleepy expressions. "Would you like to go home for a rest now?" she asked Orion, placing a hand on his shoulder. He smiled appreciatively and agreed that he would. It had been a wonderful trip to the North Star, but now he was looking forward to going home for a bit of quiet time with his family. Orion, Nova, Cosmo and Astrid all held hands and flew back out of the North Star gates towards their home in the clouds above planet Earth. When they eventually reached their little purple house in the clouds, Orion tried to conceal a yawn, but he wasn't fooling anyone. They could all see how exhausted he was. "Why don't we all cuddle up on the sofa and I'll read us a story?" Nova suggested, much to the delight of Cosmo and Astrid. While Nova chose a story to read, Orion grabbed a big blanket and joined his children on the sofa to curl up beneath it. Cosmo and Astrid sat on either side of their father and snuggled up close to him. Nova joined them, and the family of 4 all relaxed on the sofa, warm and cosy beneath the blanket. Nova opened up the book in her hands and began to read the story to her family. After only a few minutes, Nova noticed that Cosmo and Astrid were giggling. She turned to see what was so amusing, and she noticed that Orion was already fast asleep on the sofa. Cosmo and Astrid were giggling at the sound of his soft snoring. "I don't think we gave Daddy the most relaxing night off," Astrid chuckled, pulling the blanket up a little closer to her father's chin. Nova watched her 2 children fuss over their sleeping father, and she had an idea. "Do you know what the greatest gift you could give your dad would be?" she began, capturing her children's attention. "You could use your special powers to give him some lovely dreams tonight." Cosmo and Astrid adored this idea. They had never given dreams to their parents before. They were usually in bed way before their parents retreated to sleep. Cosmo dashed off to find the bag of dream dust that he had hidden, while Astrid pondered on what dreams to give her father. "What kind of dream do you think he would like?" Astrid questioned her mother. Nova thought before replying, "I think that the best kind of dream that you could give him would have to come straight from the heart." "Straight from the heart?" Astrid thought. What exactly did that mean? Inside her heart, Astrid knew she felt feelings of love. So maybe she should give her dad a dream showing him how much she loved him. By the time Cosmo returned with the bag of dream dust, Astrid had an idea. She suggested that they give Orion a dream full of lots of special memories that they had shared together. Nova thought it was a lovely idea. Cosmo stuck his hand in the bag of dream dust and pulled out a handful of the magical golden dust. He gave half to Astrid and kept half for himself. Then, together, they stood next to their sleeping father and held their hands out above his head. They gently sprinkled glittering dream dust onto his forehead, and it instantly absorbed itself into his blue skin. As expected by the young dream givers, An enchanted dream portal opened up right in front of their eyes, allowing a window into their sleeping father's mind. Right now, they could see that their father wasn't dreaming about anything at all. He was simply slumbering, peacefully and quietly. It was up to them to place a beautiful dream in his mind, to see him happily through the rest of the night. Cosmo looked to his sister and asked, "What special memories shall we get him to remember then?" Astrid smiled knowingly and started to wave her hands above the dream portal. Inside the dream portal, a memory started to take shape. It was the moment that Orion had first taught Astrid to fly. Cosmo and their mother Nova watched Orion's dream unfold. In the dream, Orion was holding baby Astrid's hands, helping her as she attempted to flutter her wings to fly. Little Astrid was clearly getting frustrated that she could only lift up off the ground for a few seconds at a time, but Orion patiently waited and cheered her on. "You've got this," Orion whispered to her in the dream. "You're so close. Don't give up now." After several more attempts, Orion held baby Astrid's hands and she lifted up off the ground. He distracted her with his voice and pulled funny faces to make her laugh and relax. Without little Astrid even noticing, her tiny wings flapped so hard that she lifted up off the ground for 1, 2, 3 seconds and even longer. Orion started to guide her forwards, holding her hands, and she unknowingly floated along with him. Then, when he decided she was ready, he gently let go of her hands and allowed her to hover there in mid-air on her own. Baby Astrid looked absolutely delighted, and Orion cheered her on and celebrated her achievement. When she was ready to land again, Orion scooped up baby Astrid into a big hug. He kept saying over and over again how proud he was of her. From Orion's sleeping position on the sofa, they could all see a soft smile creep across his lips. He was clearly enjoying this heartwarming dream. Cosmo then had an idea for another dream to give their father. He waved his hands above the dream portal, casting away the previous memory and replacing it with another one. They all looked on as Orion's dream recounted the first night that he and Cosmo had headed out into the sky, delivering dreams together. They all watched as Orion packed up an extra little bag of dream dust for young Cosmo and placed it in his hand. Then he whispered to his son, "This is your dream dust, Cosmo, and with this dust, you can create any dream you want for whoever it lands on. Do you have some ideas?" In the dream, young Cosmo nodded his head excitedly, and together the father and son flew hand in hand out into the night sky. Together they soared above the houses and shared ideas as they handed out dreams to the sleeping people they visited. Cosmo was clearly in awe of his father, and Orion was obviously proud of his son. The sleeping Orion stirred slightly as he audibly chuckled in his sleep at the playful addition Cosmo added to a dream. Cosmo had done very well as Orion's dream-giving apprentice that night, and Orion clearly looked back on the memory fondly. Their mother Nova watched on as her children gave their father sweet memories to dream about. She was sure that Orion would be very grateful for these dreams, and they would allow him to enjoy a rejuvenating, tranquil sleep. Nova decided to add one last memory to the collection of Orion's dreams. She waved her hands above the dream portal, and an image began to form in Orion's mind. Cosmo and Astrid gazed inside the portal and saw a picture of Nova wearing a long white dress and carrying a bouquet of sparkling moon lilies. She floated down an aisle, surrounded by friends and family, and approached Orion, who waited at the other end. Cosmo and Astrid gasped at how beautiful their mother looked. In the dream, Nova took Orion's hands at the top of the aisle, and Cosmo and Astrid realized that this was a snapshot into their parents' wedding day. The two children wanted to continue watching, but Nova closed the dream portal with a wave of her hands. Cosmo asked, "Why did you close the dream portal, Mum?" "How we can't see what he's dreaming about," Astrid added. Nova smiled and replied that that was the point. She had given their father a lovely memory of their wedding day to continue dreaming about for the rest of the night. But now it was time for Cosmo and Astrid to head to bed for some dreams of their own. The two young dream givers sighed and moaned. They didn't want to go to bed just yet. They were having fun providing dreams for their father. But Nova assured them that they would feel cranky the next day if they didn't get some good rest now. Cosmo and Astrid left their father to sleep on the sofa beneath his comfy blanket and followed their mother to bed. She was right. If they didn't get some good sleep of their own now, then how would they ensure that everyone on Earth had good dreams tomorrow night? They need to be well rested if they wanted to help others. Nova tucked her children into bed and kissed them on their cheeks. "Good night, Cosmo. Good night, Astrid," she whispered as she dimmed their lamplights. Astrid rolled over in bed, closed her eyes and asked her mother before she left, "Mummy, will Daddy have good dreams for the rest of the night?" Nova smiled and assured her daughter that yes, Orion's dreams would be wonderful for the rest of the night, because they would include their special family who loved him very much.